Alright everybody, what is going on? Welcome back to the channel. I am Blue Monkey, and today we're going to be looking at a developer update for Diablo 4, which showcases some of the game's armor, some of the game's enemy types, the character creation, and such like that. Guys, we're going to go ahead and get right into it. Before we do, I just wanted to remind you that leaving me a like on the video helps the channel out a ton, and if you want to see more Diablo 4 updates just like this, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. I'm also covering Hellblade: Senua's Saga. I'm also covering Elden Ring. Let's go ahead and get right into it. So this update comes in the form of a blog post that was just posted earlier today. I will go ahead and link you guys that down below, and the whole thing is focused around the aesthetic of the game, the graphics, like I mentioned before, the armor, character models, enemy models, and stuff like that. We also get a brief look at character customization, and let me tell you guys, these screenshots and these live renderings look really good. Essentially, they're looking at the way that they can balance high fantasy with dark fantasy. Now, obviously, this is Diablo. It's gonna lean heavily into dark fantasy, and that's exactly what they say. So this is what they said when talking about the spiders in the game. It says, spiders are one of the funnest monster families in the game because they're just hardwired in our brains to be creepy. Mueller added, you want to find a way to treat these things where it feels like dark fantasy, and if it starts to feel too high fantasy, that's where we try to kind of rein it in and say, well, that idea was really cool in Diablo 3 or Diablo 2. How can we put that into Diablo 4 and have it like work with the aesthetic and what we're trying to do in the new game? And judging by the statement right here, and I'm not exactly sure how they're gonna manage to pull this off, but it seems like Diablo 4 is gonna be even darker than the previous games. And honestly, now that I think about it, you could kind of tell that just from the reveal trailer where Lilith was revealed, and that is gonna be solidified by the enemy models that I'm about to show you, starting with the Blood Bishop. Just look at this thing. This is what they have to say about it. Our game design goal for the Blood Bishop was to make a caster who would cast direct damage and create AoE bombs for Area of Denial. As for the visual notes, we wanted a high-level boss based on vampiric blood and magic. We knew we wanted to double down on the notion of a heart shape for the function of the blood magic. That naturally led to the notion of arteries creating these blood clots that explode to cast the AoE effect design needs. So I love when game developers kind of go this deep with their their enemy creation. It's not just another badass looking enemy that happens to be damaging you. They have like a whole lore and theme around it, and the visuals of the character itself, as well as the spells it casts, kind of match together to create an enemy that's actually believable. And they did the same thing with the Skeleton Lord. This guy looks sick too. I mean, look at him. He's got skulls all over his chest, and what is that weapon? Some type of, it almost looks like a staff, but it also looks like it could club you directly in the head and do some serious damage. He's got that cage around his face, and all in all, he's just really well rendered. And I think the armor design, in addition to the enemy design, goes really well together. They say this undead Skeleton Lord is made of few skeleton and body parts, with sinew and blood connecting together, something we felt fit our game visually. Yes, indeed. Oh my god, and look at this monstrosity. What is that? What is that? Just some kind of bloated corpse that the spider is reanimating and potentially laying its eggs inside of? Actually, that's exactly what they say it is. It says, this spider feeding upon a birthing spider spawn from a bloated corpse has a great visual design. And I completely agree. I am absolutely disgusted by this thing, and that makes me feel things. And again, just by looking at this is not high fantasy. This is 100% dark fantasy. And I mean, just look at the lighting. Look at how the colors and the shapes and the character models interact with the lighting and with the shadows. It just has a very crisp and well-polished feel. All right, now let's look at Succubus. It says, this Succubus is another great example of an interesting and clear visual read from gameplay with finer details that don't get in the way of the game camera, but really raise the visual bar. My god, I mean, it's just hard to say one bad thing about these enemy models. I mean, she looks downright terrifying. She has a set of arms coming out of the back of her head that have wings on them that allows her to fly. Her main arms, look at her index fingers, they're like giant talons. Just the artists for this game are doing such an incredible job. She's got the purple glowing eyes and just looks like a formidable foe, you know? And we see another great example of the lighting quality in this game with this armored enemy. Look how the shadows interact with the spikes on his shield. Look how the shadows interact behind his shield casting shadows onto his face, and even the details of the lighting and the shadowing coming from his weapon and how it kind of casts onto the rest of his armor. It's very, very lifelike, but it's also very cinematic at the same time. You know, I think they've struck a really good balance here with the visuals, and if the rest of the game is going to look like this as well, I am absolutely pumped. They say organic surfaces are also represented accurately in our engine. Fur, bone, flesh, and blood are all visible and react to light correctly. This is a Diablo game after all, and we know these materials will be important. I'm not exactly sure what this enemy is called right here. Some type of Cerberus with extra heads. You can't even see his whole body. He just looks terrifying. And notice that you can see the details, even though it's all shadowed. Well, not all shadowed, right? You have the light coming in from the background on the left side, and then you have a little bit of blue light casting over the front of him. But all in all, even though he's sitting in presumably a cave or some type of shadowed area, you can easily see the details of the model. And the fact that they're so sparingly revealed just makes it even more creepy. And we also get a very small look at some of the created character options, but just the variety in these 4 different faces. This example that we have on the screen right now is for the rogue, and you can just see not only the different skin colors, different eye shapes, eye colors, different face paints, hairstyles, hair colors. The only thing that to me looks similar is just the overall shape of the character's face. You know what I mean? They all kind of have wide rounded chins and soft features, but they still manage to look very, very different. So they've also updated the dye system, it looks like. And what they're doing is they have created a way to tell the game, like if you're gonna dye your armor blue, it's not gonna look the exact same on a cloth surface as it is on a metal surface. So what they say is, to address this, we added data to our armor that identifies specific material types and tells the dye system what color goes on what material, such as leather, fabric, metal, and other specific surfaces. The result is armor that is dyeable in a range of colors that still feel grounded and realistic in the world that we're building for Diablo 4. So it sounds like, as much as you might want to, I don't think it's actually even going to be possible for you to have, for example, a bright pink or a bright yellow character. They are really grounding the dark fantasy and the aesthetic in this game to make sure that everything fits into the world and is believable. So here we have a little gif of a barbarian with various dyes applied to his armor, and you can see that not only the color of the cloth changes, but also the color of the metal, the color of the highlights within the scarf that he has. And we even see differences between like the leather type fabrics and the more cloth type fabrics. And they all look really good. Here's a screenshot of a sorceress with 3 different armor dyes on the character as well. Once again, they all look really good. They all look really high quality. They all look very crisp. So I have a couple slow motion videos for you of the Barbarian and of the Rogue. We'll start with the Barbarian. And just notice and pay attention to the way the armor and fabric interacts with the character model. Another great example of next-gen gaming. The different materials interact with the character's movements in a very realistic way. You don't see like armor pieces or limbs glitching through the material. It just looks really polished. I mean, you can see on his skirt, for lack of a better term, how it kind of rolls around his legs as he walks instead of being glued in place or, like I said, glitching through any of the other solid surfaces. And another good side effect that we're getting here is a sneak peek at some of the armor sets for the Barbarian, and we're gonna look at Rogue in just a second, but it's just nice to see such a wide variety of armor that all fit the same aesthetic of the class. You know what I mean? So let's look at the Rogue. Same thing. You can see the way the fabric of the armor interacts with the movements of the body. It's these nitty-gritty details that are going to make this game so immersive. Because we've all played games like that, right? Where it looks really good, but the graphics glitch out from time to time, and it just breaks the immersion. A classic example of this is in Destiny 2, when the Hunter's Cloak will glitch out and become like 5 times its normal size and just start tweaking everywhere. It just breaks the immersion, and it prevents you from getting so sucked in. Ooh, and I love this armor set for the Rogue, the gold mask. Almost looks like something out of Call of Duty or even like Scorpion from Mortal Kombat. That's tight. And speaking of armor, in an interview with Polygon, they say, I do feel we've kind of created a lot more room for contrast between the very high level and, you know, your starter gear. We want to have that really strong, iconic feel of the high level Barbarian. You know, at the top, after you've explored the entire world of Sanctuary, you've been into all the dungeons, and your gear should reflect that. So it should contrast with what you start with, right? So I feel we've taken a much more toned down approach, knowing that it's a very long runway we're trying to create. Now, I'm not sure if these next two screenshots that I'm about to put up on the screen are the starter gear. They do seem pretty toned down. It might be like a mid-range type of gear, but look at this rogue right here, right? And it looks amazing, and again, like, it really fits into the aesthetic of the game. I like how the left pauldron actually straps across his entire chest. That's a really cool design idea. But if this is your low end or your mid end gear even, I can't even imagine what your high tier stuff is going to look like. Now, it's probably not going to be as extravagant as it has been in the previous games, given that they're trying to maintain a realistic and, self-enclosed game world where everything kind of makes sense. But I just have to give props, and here's the Barbarian as well. I just have to give props to the character and the armor designers and the artists behind this game. Everything looks so good. And another thing that statement kind of makes me feel is that this game is going to have a lot of longevity to it. At least they're aiming for it, right? So like I said again, he says, so I feel we've taken a much more toned down approach, knowing that it is a very long runway we're trying to create. Long runway meaning replayability, lots of content, a good gameplay loop, a good progression system. Now, there's no details or anything confirmed about that yet, but just from this statement alone tells me the direction that they're trying to go with the game, and I absolutely love it. Again, if you're interested in more Diablo 4 updates, be sure to subscribe down below. And right now on screen, I have an Elden Ring and a Senua's Saga video. If you want to check those out, go ahead and click to your right. Thanks again, guys. Once again, I'm Blue Monkey, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.